So those of you who were here last month heard Sharon's talk on part one of our trip to Arizona in early September of last year. And now that covered butterflies. Now we're going to cover all the other good stuff. Now, before we move on, some of you may be wondering about my middle name there. And that's the name I use when I'm west of the Pecos River. So I'm here, I'm regular Wade Wander. Over there, I'm Wade Wyatt Wander. And I also forgot to bring something I really wanted to bring, little paddles for people to write down their objections. And then you could wave them at me, you know. It's very effective. With the what? That's what I just told you.
You said that, why you named that west of the Mississippi? Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, like Wyatt Earp, but like, you know, hey. I didn't think it needed any elaboration. Okay. Oh, I should get out my thingamajig here. Whoop. So we flew into Phoenix. Very hot in Phoenix, even in September. Very hot in Phoenix. And we had a bit of a hassle with our rent-a-car. Fred Pfeiffer and Jonathan Kleises had an easy time with their rental, but I had a very difficult time with my rental, which I'll get into later if we have time. And we drove from Phoenix southeast down to Tucson. We spent several days in Tucson, then continued southeast to Sierra Vista, and we made a side trip over to Patagonia, which is right around there, and then back to Phoenix again. So it was a fairly quick trip, but a fun trip. So in case you're thinking of moving to Arizona, this is what you need to know. So the average high in Phoenix on September 1 is 103. Phoenix. 103 average high on September 1. And you'd think heading south, Tucson is 113 miles from Phoenix, and the temperature dropped about 6 degrees on September 1 on average. But it's about, 1,500 feet higher. And then just outside Tucson is Summerhaven, which is near the top of Mount Lemmon at 8,000 feet, and it's 72 degrees. Further south at Sierra Vista, you're climbing higher now, 86 degrees, so you're 17 degrees cooler than Phoenix, and Patagonia is to the west of Sierra Vista, and that's about the same temperature. It's interesting, Mount Lemmon was named after a botanist by the name of Sarah Lemon. She was the first person to climb Mount Lemmon, and she was a botanist. How about that, huh? Little tidbit of information I picked up on the bottom of a Snapple iced tea cap. Yeah, yeah. So here we are in Phoenix, 110 degrees. So pretty darn hot. So we didn't spend much time in Phoenix. We headed out right away. Oh, it covered up my my takeoff on the Jimmy Webb song. Oh well, you know, by the time I get to Phoenix, you know, blah blah blah. Okay. All right. Here are the photographers. RD is Renee Davis, JS Jim Springer, JK Jonathan Kleises, who's not here, FP Fred Pfeiffer, SW Sharon Wander. So here is a picture by Renee Davis of me taking a picture of this satyr up here. Now I'm glad Renee took this picture because it explains why so many of my photos are blurry. I'm always taking them through leaves. You see, that's an important lesson there. Now this is the way you ought to do it. Here's Jim at Ramsey Canyon. all settled in, nice and snug, and taking pictures of butterflies just a few feet away. A lot of sulfurs were puddling in this area. And this is a butterfly club, so I felt obligated to show at least one butterfly. So this was one of, well, this is painted lady. Now, there are 3 species of ladies that occur in southern Arizona. There's by far the most common is painted. Next to that is American, and then the rarest is West Coast lady. There was a sighting of a West Coast lady in Patagonia at the time we were there, but we somehow managed to miss it. I know, it's a cool beetle, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know what it is. So when we got to Tucson, we drove around, and you just pull over on the side of the road. A lot of the roads are dirt roads, and you just pull over where you see some flowers or where there's a little bit of moisture, and you spend some time butterflying and photographing things. And you can do that a lot around there. The scenery is terrific. So here's Jonathan's photograph of typical scenery outside of Tucson along the Sasco Road. Sasco is the name given to an old mining town. It's like a ghost town now. That was operating in the early 1900s. Sasco stands for something, Southwest something Smelting Company, Southwest Arizona Smelting Company, something like that. And it was a very active town, had a lot of people in it for 15 or 20 years. And then there was some murders or something, and I don't know what happened. Yeah, I mean, and here we are outside of Sabino Canyon, I think. Is that right, Sharon? Oh. Oh, you know what? I shouldn't have put my labels up there. Huh. Well, in any event, it's pretty hot, but it's a dry heat. So, you walk around, you don't feel so bad. You're in the sun all the time. The weather there was beautiful at that time of year. It was sunny every day, practically. And here we are scouting for butterflies and anything else we can come across. Here's a shot showing 4 different species of cactus. You got your prickly pears down here, your cholla here, and saguaro, and there's a barrel cactus right there. And there were some birds in this area and a few butterflies, but it was extremely dry when we were there. They had a decent monsoon season, apparently, when this was right at the end of it. But with monsoons, some places get a lot of rain, some places very nearby get no rain. And we had a hard time finding water. And you had to take it wherever you could get it. So here we have a mud puddle. You can see it's been drying, and in another day or two, this water would have evaporated. But you can see all the butterflies here. A lot of these are snouts, but there's also blues mixed in here and a few other things. So we spent a fair amount of time scouting out that place. And right nearby, the grass along the side of the road was loaded with snouts. All of these little dark spots here are snouts. And they were crossing the road, miles and miles. We were driving on this road, and there were snouts crossing the road constantly. I don't like to think about how many we killed driving along there. No, they're just resting or whatever. Yeah. Yep. So one of the neat things to do just outside Tucson is to go up Mount Lemmon. Almost 9,200 feet. Mount Lemmon is the tallest mountain in the Catalina Mountains, but certainly not the tallest mountain in Arizona. And here are the various habitat types as you move up in elevation. Start off at desert scrub, and then at the very top, over 8,000 feet, you get into the mixed conifer forest. So a trip up Mount Lemon, if you're in that area, is well worth it. It's fantastic. You can start at the base here outside Tucson, and it's in the 90s or it's in the low hundreds. And by the time you get up to the top of Mount Lemon, it's in the 60s. So it's wonderful, and it's nice and cool and breezy up there. A lot of birds. So here we are going up Mount Lemon. This is at a fairly low elevation. And Tucson itself, the city of Tucson, is about 550,000. It hasn't really, the town itself, the city itself, hasn't grown that much in population since the time Sharon and I were there on our honeymoon in 1984. What's grown is the Tucson metro area. That's the sprawl. That's the sprawl you see here. This is all the Tucson metro area. Unbelievable. So they're up over 1 million now. So it's practically doubled the population of Tucson itself. And further up, we were at a place called Molino Basin, 4,400 feet elevation on Mount Lemon. There are lots of pull-offs, lots of places you can stop and enjoy the views or actually walk around. And while we were here, this freelance journalist, very nice young lady, spotted us, and we figured we'd make a good story. Wasn't she disappointed? No, but she spent some time. Here she is talking with Fred, and I know Rini was talking with her quite a bit. And I hope she came away with a story that was usable. Higher up still, 6,900 feet at Windy Point. You can see the road snaking its way up here. It's a good road, and it operates all year long. Mount Lemon actually has a ski resort at the top. It's the southernmost ski resort in the United States. You know, it's not like a Colorado ski resort. It's more like a New Jersey ski resort, you know. But yeah, it's a good road all the way up to Summer Haven, and then even above that. At the top of Mount, this is Jonathan's wonderful photograph of a yellow-eyed junco, which you only really see at the higher elevations. So we saw that near the top of Mount Lemon. Interesting fact is that yellow-eyed junco is the only junco that walks. The other juncos hop. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't really think it's a junco then. And as I said, water was at a premium. So here we are on Fort Huachuca, which is just outside Sierra Vista. So now we're way in southern Arizona now, not too far from the border with old Mexico. And here's a little stream crossing the road, and this is a good spot for butterflies. Any wet spot was had some butterfly activity. And here's Jim and Sharon and Rini taking a look at some of the butterflies there. And just outside Sierra Vista, we went up Carr Canyon Road, my nemesis. Sharon and I have been on Carr Canyon Road 3 times, and every time we've had interesting stories, shall I say, to tell. So what you're looking at here, you're looking down, this is Sierra Vista. This is the town of Sierra Vista. And here is Fort Huachuca, or at least a part of it. Fort Huachuca actually extends this way quite a bit, up into the foothills and canyons. And I don't know whether you can see it or not, but right here, there's a blimp, a little blimp. And when we were going up Carr Canyon Road, we kept seeing this blimp everywhere. I was getting paranoid. We kept seeing this blimp. And actually what it is it's a radar, it's an unmanned radar-controlled blimp that's looking for low-flying aircraft coming from Mexico carrying drugs, possibly, into the United States. And there's 2 of these blimps. I'm not sure that they operate at the same time. But that was interesting. Well, the other thing that's interesting is that is tethered to the ground by a nylon rope. I kid you not, which they buy at the dollar store and knit it together and then just, you know. But Fort Huachuca you can go into. It's a military base. It got started right after the Civil War, the 1870s. And it was originally founded to fight the Apaches to protect the settlers in that area. And then it gradually became bigger and bigger and bigger. And today it's a very active base with a lot of soldiers on it. But they do allow you to go in. You have to pass a test. You have a Homeland Security kind of deal. So the rest of them got in. I had to stay outside. All right, so let's get to some of the stuff that we saw. White line sphinxes, very common in the south and in the west. No matter where you go out west or down south, you see white line sphinxes. They're in New Jersey, but they're not nearly as common. I've had them at my lights every year, but they're not that common. So this is a late stage caterpillar. You can see the false horn here, which is at the rear of the caterpillar. And here's a lizard that's got himself a very nice meal. Probably won't have to eat for several days. Some more caterpillars. Pipevine swallowtail occurs in a red form, and that's that one. This is the things off. This is a Patelodes putefacta. This is a fairly large species of moth. We have the same genus in New Jersey. They're called the angel, and the other one is called the spotted Patelodes. I've had them both at my lights. And this was an interesting one we saw at Molino Basin, where we were being interviewed by that journalist. And I didn't know what it was. We looked it up, and I don't think that iNaturalist was any help. But we finally found out it was Hubbard's silk moth, which is restricted to the desert regions of the Southwest, and it apparently is very local. This one was being attacked by ants. There's an ant you can see here, and there was another one over there. So it kept going back and forth like this, trying to get the ants off it. Rabbit brush. This is one of the great plants for butterflies and other pollinators. This one is called rubber rabbit brush because it was used as a substitute for true rubber during the during World War I, and I think even World War II. And in here, you probably can't see them, but I counted it up the other day. There's 24 small butterflies in here, primarily metal marks and blues, and what else? Metal marks, blues, and there was something else in there. In any event, whenever you saw a rabbit brush, it was worth stopping at. It was in full bloom at that time of year. And some flowers. Now this is, the top two are up on Carr Canyon Road. This one here, we stopped. There was believe it or not, there was a botanist on the side of the road who was familiar with Sussex County, New Jersey. Weird. Really weird. And this is extremely rare. This is a southern species. And one of the few places you can find it is up on Carr Canyon at a certain elevation. But we forgot to write the name down. So I don't know what it was. And I don't know who the botanist was. And growing nearby was this one, and I don't remember what that one was either. However, this one is the flax-flowered, how do you pronounce that? Ippomopsis. Ippomopsis. Right. Arizona poppy was around. Arizona poppy is not a poppy. It's a totally different group. Unlike the California poppy, which is a true poppy. Mimosas, at least there's at least one species of mimosa which is native to the desert southwest of the United States. However, it's not a tree. It's basically a small shrub, maybe 3, 4 feet tall, and it did attract pollinators. Several species of century plants we came across. This was Palmer's. Palmer's? Yeah, this was Palmer's century plant. So this is one of the giant skippers. Is the host plant. Arizona giant skipper. So this is in this flowers in late summer, and it only flowers once. It flowers and then it dies. So that's it for the century plant. But it usually produces a lot of progeny. So they keep going. I don't know. It's several decades anyway. I mean, it's not a century. It's not a century. Now, you probably all thought that grasshoppers were pretty benign, pretty innocuous. They feed on vegetation. But when the opportunity presents itself, it turns carnivorous. And I've noticed that at my lights, the katydids will eat other insects at my lights. So it's interesting. This is the male, and that's the female. Female's larger. And at this, I forget where we were here. Miller Canyon, maybe. Box Canyon, maybe, yeah. But there was a swarm of grasshoppers. They were all crossing the road, so there were squished grasshopper bodies all over the place. A few other insects. I think this is the Texas bush katydid. Not fully mature yet. And a green lynx spider. You see green lynx spiders everywhere when you're down south, southwest, tropics. Incredibly abundant spider, and here it is on rabbit brush. And of course, we had to show a moth. The thin-banded, for crying out, lichen moth, thank you. The thin-banded lichen moth. We don't have that here. We have species of lichen moths, but not this particular one. We didn't see a whole lot of moths, but then again, we weren't doing any mothing. We didn't have any sheets up or anything. Some of the other things we saw, mesquite borer beetle. This was also at Molina Basin. This is about 2 inches. Big beetle. Whoop. What happened?
I'm just trying to get that black thing stopping. There we go.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. And this was a really cool tachinid fly at the top of Mount Lemon. We have tachinid flies here. It's a very common, abundant group of flies. Oh, tiny, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch, maybe, 3/8 of an inch. The ones we have here don't look anything like that. This is, I mean, if you were to divide insects into cool insects and uncool insects, this would be a cool one. Bright red. And all tachinid flies have this spiky look to them, like a bad haircut. A few dragonflies, like I said, it wasn't very wet out, so we didn't see a whole lot of dragonflies. This is a red rock skimmer. And lizards and other herps. Yes, Southwest is famous for them. This is one of the whiptails. A lot of species of whiptails. Don't know which one this is. I don't know that I spent a lot of time trying to find out. And this is Jim's picture of an ornate tree lizard. Handsome devil. And Clark's spiny lizard. This is life size, incidentally. This is, it's like a Komodo dragon, No, it's about 8 inches or something. We saw that, I don't know, maybe Patton's hummingbird area. That's true. Yeah, I was trying to catch birds. Yeah, the hummingbirds were going back and forth, you know. Yeah, that tongue would just go right out and catch them. And then we took a drive up to Montezuma Pass. We're very near the Mexican border here at this point. And you can see that big, beautiful wall. There it is, right there. Lovely wall. Montezuma Pass, 6,500 feet and change. It's a nice place. You get wonderful, spectacular views, and the road going up there is very good. It's not like Carr Canyon Road. Closer view of that wall. You can see some people crossing over it right there. You know, George Patton once said that all fixed structures are monuments to man's stupidity because they can either be gone over, around, under, or through, you know. But what do I know? And this is looking the other way now. So now we're looking into old Mexico right in here. The wall would be going, you make sort of a turn here. The wall would be going sort of off in that direction now. So this is old Mexico. And believe it or there's a dirt road here. And believe it or not, that went to a Dunkin' Donuts. Unbelievable. They're everywhere. Ah, some birds. Immature Blackhawk. Very tame. It was hard to chase that bird away. Took a lot of pictures. Very obliging bird, a Southwest specialty. Here it is in flight. Isn't that a gorgeous bird? Big bird too. Primarily a lizard and mammal hunter. And then the group had quite a discussion about this bird. I was getting quite agitated after 10 minutes of conversation. I said, it's a Harris's hawk, and then I drove off. Actually, there were two of them. There were two of these immature Harris's hawks. Long tail, pretty long legs. It's a Harris's hawk. Jonathan's picture of a brewer sparrow. This is something that probably turns up in the east every now and then, I imagine, because it's migratory. So it breeds, you know, up in the northwest, and then it migrates down to the southwest. And typically birds that have that sort of long migration, they're the ones that tend to wander outside of their normal migration route. It's very tiny bill, it's about with a very small bill, about 5.5 inches. Oh, isn't that cool? Acorn woodpecker. We saw this at, nearby one of the hummingbird feeders where there was some water. And the closest thing we have here in behavior would be the red-headed woodpecker. Cactus wren, very noisy, but interesting birds, very, very neat birds. They don't wander too much. Now, I know this as the western scrub jay, but, you know, I think that they've split these now, and this may be something else called Woodhouse's scrub jay or some such nonsense. Thick-billed kingbird, we had two of these side by side. This was near Patton's Hummingbird Haven, it's called. That was outside of Patagonia. And speaking of Patton's Hummingbird Haven, it was a neat place to go to, lots of trails. There were benches and stuff. You could, a little building, you could sit in the shade and then just walk the trails. This is very near where we saw our only large dotted roadside skipper, the only one we saw on the whole trip. Now we get to what the Southwest for birders is famous for, and that is hummingbirds. You can with luck and perseverance, you can see 14 different species. We saw 10. And almost all of these pictures now of these hummingbirds are going to be from Jonathan or Fred with their, long lenses, I mean, spectacular photography, just really spectacular. So there's Anna's. Berlin was the rarest one we had. That's southern, and it barely creeps up into Arizona in a couple of places. And we had one of these at some place. Broad build. All of the stuff is really pretty spectacular. Costas. Look at that. Rufous hummer. That's a migratory species, a long migratory species, and out west. So sometimes they turn up here in the east, practically every year now. Violet crowned, I like violet crowned hummers. And my own humble contribution, an immature blue-throated hummingbird. This is the largest species we saw, about 5.5 inches or so. We also made a brief stop at the Beatty's Guest Ranch in Miller Canyon. This place does have cabins, and they rent them out to people. It's a nice place to stay. You're pretty close to the Mexican border here. And they have the record, I think, of having 14 different species of hummingbirds. So they have hummingbird feeders set up around these aluminum bleachers that they put into the woods, and you can just sit there and look or photograph the hummingbirds. It looks like, oh, the other thing about this place is it's a big apple orchard. And you never saw such small trees, less than head high, with fruit so big, the size of pomegranates or grapefruits. I don't know how they supported it, but it's an interesting place. This is where the people who manage the place live. And then, getting back around, we're pretty much ready to head home here. This is a different century plant, a different agave. This is Parry's agave. And here's just a general view of Box Canyon and the road. A lot of these dirt roads are easily drivable. For most of them, you don't need a four-wheel drive. You don't need high carriage, except if you go up Carr Canyon. That's the one. That'll get you. And then Patagonia was a favorite place. It's a small town to the west of Sierra Vista. And you're greeted by all this really neat artwork. It's kind of like an artist colony, a little kind of a small town where you can get the hippies from the 60s and the people running from the law, basically, are in Patagonia. But this is some of the artwork here, you see. So here's a vermilion flycatcher, a violet crowned hummingbird, and whatever that dude is, or that dude. Oh, there's an egret. Yeah, it was pretty neat. Oh, there's a gray hawk up there. I didn't see that before. Neat place, Patagonia. Here's some more stuff in town. They have flowers planted in various locations, and they're busy with butterflies. This one's neat. I love this one, the harlequin quail and another violet crowned hummer. And, even the men's room signs have good artwork. It's amazing to me. I mean, when's the last time you saw that on the turnpike? It's just amazing. And this is where we spent quite a bit of time. This was a fairly large garden, a fenced garden that was well maintained by the locals. And this is where we had a lot of butterflies, took a lot of photographs, was in here. So you got to be sure to keep javelina out. Javelinas are like a peccary, it's a pig-like animal. And if it got in there, it would, eat stuff and root around with its snout and tusks and whatnot. So they wanted you to keep that out. It was hot here, but it wasn't overwhelmingly hot. That's my memory, was that it was a bit toasty. So we're gonna end with this ripping off the Eagles here, taking it easy, sitting at a corner in Patagonia, Arizona. And Sharon was so taken with this place. When we got home, she was checking Zillow for houses in Patagonia. And you know what's interesting is that you'd think that they'd be cheap, but they're not. They're not. You want a very modest 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath place on not a big piece of property. We're not talking a ranch here, and it was like, 450,000 or something. So it's not cheap. And this restaurant was fantastic. We all had great meals there. So, Car Canyon. So if you want to go up Car Canyon, be sure to rent a 4-wheel or all-wheel drive vehicle with high clearance. Okay, because the road after the first few miles is not maintained. It's not really maintained at all. And we had what I thought was a 4-wheel drive. It was a big Ford Explorer, but as it turns out, it was not an all-wheel drive vehicle. It was a 2-wheel drive vehicle. And at some point, and I was the lead car for some reason. I don't know why. Fred and Jonathan had the all-wheel drive vehicle. So I'm in front, and I come across these 2 enormous parallel ruts. Enormous. So I figured out a way to go through it. I thought right next to the sheer cliff, and I didn't make it. Didn't make it. So wheels just kept spinning. Hey, it's not an all-wheel drive vehicle. That's when I found out. Well, I had my inklings before when I was doing some skidding when I shouldn't have been. But in any event, there was nothing to do except to back down. Backing down 8 miles. No, I didn't back down 8 miles. I found I didn't have to go too far. I just backed down a little bit, and there was a bit of a wide section of the road, and I did a K-turn, and everything was fine. But the first time we were up there on our honeymoon, our rental car, the check engine light came on. Now, 1984, check engine lights were not common. That was the inception of check engine lights. So I said, well, I'll get out of the car and I'll open up the hood. I open up the hood, the engine's still there. So I said, okay, I checked the engine. Maybe the light will go off now. Light didn't go off. So I think we made it all the way up. And then when we came back down, and then back in those days, there were phone booths. And I called the rental agency, and I'll never forget this. The lady there says, oh, the check engine light, that's on all the time. Don't worry about it. And then in 2012, the NABA national trip was to southern Arizona. And Car Canyon was one of the destinations that the leaders took us to. And in Tucson, again, I had arranged for an all-wheel drive, high-clearance vehicle. By the time we got there were none left. The only thing available was this Pontiac Bonneville, which was a parade float car. I mean, that's what it was. It's the kind of car where you see people on the back seat waving to people who don't really care who they are. And so everyone else, we were in this line of cars, and everyone else had this nice 4-wheel drive vehicle. And we're in the middle with this, I think it was a white Pontiac Bonneville float car. Somehow we were told, you're never going to make it up there in that car. Never going to make it up. May as well turn around. We made it all the way up. And the car was worse for wear, of course. And then there's this third time where we didn't make it up because the road had deteriorated even more since the last time we were up it. So, but it's a great place. If you've never been to southern Arizona, it's certainly a good place to go. I don't know whether National Lab is gonna have another trip there or not. Jim may know more about that, but the difficulty is finding locals to organize everything. That's the problem. You know, you have to have a chapter that's got a lot of active people who are willing to do the work, which is not easy to find.